All right, we're back at it. I got a good prognosis from my orthopedic doctor regarding the arm. She just has me in a brace that gives me good mobility with my fingers. I just got to be careful not to push or try to lift. So, what I did do yesterday is finish up on this pan because I just had short sections of weld on it. So let's take a look real quick. So yeah, I went all the way along where it joins up to the front pan and got weld and all that. So today I'm going to prime that because I'm pretty much done in that area. And then I got the parts to get the seats in. Let's take a look at those again. So the plate that goes on the pan, and what will happen is these hinges will weld to the plate, and then this bracket, I can't remember what the orientation is, that lives on the cross member. So got all that stuff new, ready to go. Got some seam sealer. That's something I can definitely do while I'm partially incapacitated. So we're going to start moving forward again here in the garage. The first step is to get the seat itself off the seat rails, and some of this can actually be done with the seat in the car. So in other words, if you wanted to pull the seat off the rails, you would press down on the adjustment lever here, and you'll see those teeth coming out. And then here is like a flat spring, and there's a stop. That's the stop inside. So if it was mounted in the car, you'd shove a long screwdriver all the way down the rail here and push that metal tine up, and then push your adjuster down, and the seat will slide all the way forward, completely out. This is driver's side, so it would slide towards the steering wheel. So can't really show you doing that because I'm going to have to attempt to do it with like one hand. But I'm going to get the seat rails off and start conditioning them. They're actually in pretty good shape. This one is pretty minor rust considering the metal it was sitting on. Obviously the upholstery on this is pretty much toast, but I want to get this rail off and get started on painting it and making it more functional. So with the floor mount off the rails, you can see now how this stop works. It's slotted, and then on the rail itself, or the mount underneath here, you see that pin. That's what keeps it from sliding off that mount. So next, I got to extract these screws. Should go right into the fiberglass, and I think there's just nuts captured by the fiberglass. Now obviously these two screws are obstructed by the adjuster handle. I think that comes off whenever I pull the back two. So let me find, that looks like a probably 6 or 5 millimeter hex. Let's see what happens. Okay, got the rails off. The adjuster handle is actually captured by a pin that runs through there, so you can just lift it up and get to those two mounting screws. I just realized I didn't really have to take these off in order to put the seat mount in the floor pan, but it will be a lot easier to clean them up with a wire brush off the fiberglass seat. So, and to clean up the fiberglass seat will be easier. Driver's side was more the same, except the handle on the adjustment lever is broken off. But I note that it is like held on with probably just two rivets. So replacing that either with OE or some kind of ring or whatever shouldn't be that big a deal. Here it is on the passenger side. So anyway, we'll get these screws out and this portion will be done. I got the seat mounts cleaned up, just wire brushed them and got all that surface rust off of them, and put a little paint on there. The seat rails that attach to the seats, I just wire brushed them and lubricated them. They're just bare metal. I mean, they might have a little silver paint on them from the manufacturer, but it wasn't finny. It's not very much, but nobody's going to see them. They're functional, and we'll put more grease on the rails when we put all that together. So next step is lower the lift and start fiddling with these brackets. So I've got the hinges preset on the seat rail bracket, whatever you want to call it. Note that the 10mm bolt in the rear, it's got to be a short one, because that hinge has got to clear there. So the ones that were on the car were way too rusty, so I got some out of my stash. And like I said, use short ones in the back of then one on the front side doesn't make that much difference, I don't think, because as long as it's not super long, it'll be okay. Okay, so now that I got those on there, I'm going to take all this stuff inside the car and start placing it. So the next thing is locating the brackets. So here's the segment on the passenger side of the old cross member. So that tooth piece has to be put into this bracket, and I had to kind of fiddle around with this stuff to figure out what goes where. But passenger side would be like that. I can tell you that that notch on that bracket is on the outboard side of both brackets, so they're mirror image of one another. So let me move the tooth piece off the old one into the new one. So I mocked all this up with the risers for the seat bracket and everything. And basically you just want to find a good location where that adjuster meshes in there, and then you want to be sure to have room for this, right? And you know, once you get everything square and make sure that bad boy's gonna line up, you can tack the bracket in. That's the reason I got the clamp on it. And another thing I did, I looked at the original And there's a little, looks like a locator hole right there. So it shows that bracket, that edge of that bracket pretty much lines up with that hole. And that's what I got going on in here. Looks like I might be able to cheat it about a 1/4 inch inboard. Just a little nudge. And then I think it'll be perfect. So once I get that bracket tacked in, just a couple of spots, I'll move on to the other side, do the same over there, and we'll see what's next. Okay, I have the bracket tacked on, just a couple of little spots, lined up everything, and now I'm marking where those, I'm going to call them risers, because that's what they do. They're just rise that off the 4-pin. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go in and weld, tack the hinge to the riser. Just enough to hold it in place. Same thing on the other side. And then take it to the bench and weld it nicely, because that's, if you do it in the car, it's really hard to do. I'm pretty sure I'm doing this just like it explains on the Restoration Design website. Maybe backwards, but we'll find out pretty quick. Tacking those hinges onto these plates while it's sitting in the car and everything's lined up is not very easy, but now you can see why it works, because you can just tip the thing up and get some really good welds on that hinge. Another tip here, crank your wire speed and voltage up to get good penetration. That hinge is pretty thick. Alrighty, so now I'm going back and taking off each one of these plates with the hinge welded onto it, and grinding off the sloppy welds somewhat, and putting holes in it for rosette welds, or I can use sheet metal screws to pull it down, which I'll probably do a couple. And also want to prime the underside before I weld it in. Just doing one at a time so I don't get them mixed up. Put them right back where they were. Hopefully everything will fit nicely. Also note, you have some adjustment on these seat rails backwards and forwards. So that would enable you to actually turn the seat, angle it a little bit, maybe 3 or 4 degrees at the very most, but they're on both sides. So if you don't get the plates in exactly the right spot, you know, and you feel like your seat is angled one way or another, you potentially could adjust that out. And you take the plate off the bracket and then finish welding that in. And then I'll put the plate back on and set the seat rails. I set 2 screws in those plates. Also, you want to double check your dimensions a lot. Keep checking from the side of the longitudinal to that rail. Make sure that's nice and square. And one other point, that tooth that goes in those adjusting, you don't want to sink that in too deep, because it only comes out so far. You can kind of tell on the tooth how deep it goes. It's see if I can get a shot of it here. It's not really deep, because if you go in there too deep, it won't retract far enough. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. So next step, I'm just going to take the bolts out of the hinges, and that'll give me great access. I'll take the seat rails out of the way, and then I can weld those plates down. So 8 rosette welds and 4 seam welds on each plate. Don't think they're going to go anywhere. I left the MIG welder turned up, and seems to do a lot better, get a lot better penetration. So pleased about that. I'll put in the seat rail again, double check fitment. And then next thing will be to prime all this and move on to the other side. Alrighty, passenger side in. And pull those rails out one more time, clean her up, and prime it. Okay, here's what we got with it primed. Both rails are in. They adjust properly. Now stick some seats in there and see what we got. Well, this is huge. I mean, I've been working on this chassis since January, and finally the seats fit in without falling through the floorboard. It's pretty amazing, really. I'm just thinking, what's next? It's probably going to be the front trunk. It needs a pan. So that should go a lot quicker than this floorboard did, I'll tell you that. Okay, well this is the last segment of the pan saga. Now, one thing I haven't done, I've got to get in here and put in the bracket for the emergency brake. But structurally, this thing is getting there. After the front floor pan, I'm thinking maybe I'll drop the engine. You never know which way these cars are going to take you. Thanks for watching, guys.